welcome to Adventures in 3D. I'm Anthony Ottawes and I've got some cool stuff to show you today. I actually built an entire environment today using Blender, imported it with the Web3D React 3 Fiber stuff, added a bunch of post-processing, a little bit of animation and started playing with it, and I uploaded it to GitHub. That'll be in the link description. I'm going to walk you guys through everything that I did, all the little tips and tricks. Hopefully it helps you put together a cool environment of your own. One thing I thought was cool about this one is that it's not very cartoony. It's kind of a dark atmosphere. I like that. It's a little different from some of the other stuff that you typically see. Let's get into it. So to start with, we've got the Blender environment. So the first thing you want to do is generally get like your primary object and your camera view. Once you have your camera view, then you can start setting up everything in relation to that camera view, and you don't have to worry about anything that's not going to be in the camera. So you can see I only took these pipes as far as they stayed in the screen. I didn't worry about a lot of railing and stuff on the backside of buildings. I just focused on what's in the camera view. Now, if you want to do an environment where everything scrolls down, maybe you have a menu, and as you click on menu things, it scrolls down the buildings. That's totally cool. You'd want to detail a little more. But the main thing I want to show about this environment is that everything is an instance. So I tried to repeat things as much as possible. There's not that many models in here, not that many unique models. And you can see everything that says bars, that's all one model. Everything that says railing, that's one model. Same thing with the windows. Although I did two separate ones. I did ones for the what is lit and ones that are not, and so on and so forth. And so I tried to really reuse things as much as possible. And that's when you do an Alt-D for duplicating an object instead of Shift-D. And I did that for objects that kind of don't look like our obvious instances also. If they repeat, then I trimmed it down to its basic object, and then I repeated it with instances in order to get the larger one that I wanted. And when I was here, just to show you an example, I'm going to click on one of these windows, and if I hit Shift L, we're going to select everything that's linked to that. So you can see that all of these are instances of the same object. Same thing, Shift L, object. You can see all the railing is one object that's just repeated. This is going to save you a lot of processing memory, draw calls inside of the React 3 Fiber stuff. So your camera, get your camera stuff how you want, because I do prefer to use the camera that's exported. So when we export, I check the option for exporting the camera. I will show that. So when we go to File, Export GLTF, you have to come in here to Include, and I hit Cameras. And then when it's exported, I'm going to say to use that camera and not use the orbit controls, because I like to have this default view that I set up in order to transfer everything over and get as close as I can to what I was doing in Blender. Now let's look at what I did in order to bring this over. Just like usual, the first thing that you're going to want to do is wherever your GLB is at, you're going to want to do a GLTF JSX transform. So that's npm GLTF JSX, and then whatever variables you want to have with it, but you're going to point to your GLB file here. So mine was called urban.glb, and you will do that. And what it's going to do is it's going to create for you your model file. If you forgot to tell it to output to model file, then just rename it. That's fine. And so you have this model file. It has all of your instances and everything in it. You're going to leave that alone. Probably the first thing that you want to do is set your perspective camera to true. This defaults to false, and that means that it's not going to use your camera angle, and you want it to. So set this to true. The next thing you want to do is probably mess with your lights. So I do export my lights, but they usually come in looking like this. They're like really large values, and that's what's going to happen. So if you open up your project and that's what you see, you just come in here and you're going to start reducing the light values to something that's going to resemble what you had in Blender. You can play with some other some other settings on the lights, but the intensity is going to be the main one. Decay is probably going to be the second one to play with. We're going to come back to this stuff for the animation. So in the app JSX, you're going to point to your model file. And this is important. People run into this a lot. If your app JSX says import model, so this is the pattern you're going to use for importing the default from model.jsx. If there is no default, then it's going to look like this. And what do I mean by default in the model? Is you come over to the model. If you see this export function model, it doesn't have default in it. Default would look like this. And then lastly, if we have instances, then you're going to import both the model and the instances. And then your import is going to look like this instead of just the model. If you don't have instances, then you just have this model here. So let's go through these setting by setting in order to see what the impact is. I'm going to do this in reverse so you can see I've got my little animated thing going on here, and I'm going to remove a setting, and then you can see the difference. You need a little bit of ambient light in order to see some of the smaller details. Even if you want a dark setting, that's something you're going to want to play with. Get that ambient light in there. Even if it's a nighttime scene. You wouldn't even see the backside of this stuff. All right, next up we've got the clouds. So I did clouds in two sections. I've got a foreground cloud and a background cloud, and I really like how these turned out. So I'm going to turn off one cloud, and I turned off the foreground cloud, and let's go ahead and reload this, and you can see I've got a little bit of a cloud here. I gave it a red tint. I think having the two clouds with different colors is pretty cool. Creates a interesting effect between them. And yeah, we've only got the one background cloud going. So now if I bring back the foreground cloud, I'm going to remove the background cloud. And now you can see it's that foreground one that's really blocking everything out. Because it's animated, it's neat in that it exposes different things as it goes. I like that when I have two clouds and they move at different rates, it shouldn't ever always be clear. So I commented out the clouds just so that we could see the rest of the stuff that we're doing without them being in the way. One thing that might be immediately eye-catching is this background image. So what you want to do on the background image is, if you look at my canvas, I've got GL alpha true. And what this does is allows the canvas to be transparent, so you can set up a regular CSS style for your background. So nothing real fancy, just setting up a background image on the actual HTML page, and the canvas is transparent. Obviously, this is not going to work out as well if you've got a free roaming camera. Then what you're going to want to do is have a whole environment that you're going to put around it. That's a box of images instead of one background image. But for what I was doing, this one made sense. GL alpha true, I think, is going to end up working out really well in a lot of blended web pages with 3D stuff, and 2D stuff maybe behind it, in front of it, etc. So now we're getting into the post-processing stuff that we did with Bloom and all that kind of stuff. And now Bloom is going to have a pretty dramatic impact. So I'm going to see if we can get them both on the same screen. I'm going to remove the bloom and save it, and you can see immediately how it really added that blurry glare around it, but also that drone eye had a nice bloom on it. I'm going to go ahead and add that back in, and you can see that effect that it has. Unfortunately, Three.js does not actually create light from emissions, but when you do the bloom, it kind of makes it look like it does. Brightness and contrast, I didn't think initially I wanted to do this, but I tried it from examples, and it does make a difference. When I want the dark scene look, modifying this slightly makes a difference in depth of field. So without the depth of field, everything just looks a little clearer. And that's not really something I wanted. I wanted this foreground to be pretty clear, and then I wanted to get fuzzier as you got into the background. So doing the depth of field allows for that, And I just didn't want some of these background things to have too much detail. You can see as we get to these bars back there, they definitely get fuzzier. And then, I'm really using those as a silhouette that you can kind of see through the cloud volumetric stuff. And then we've got vignette. And vignette is what darkens the borders. And I think for this dark scene, it really helps to zoom you in to the center of the screen. I'll put the vignette back on. All right, and you can see it just darkens all the edges. So I'm going to put my clouds back in. And one of the reasons the clouds look this way is because I was able to add color. So you can add the black color and the red color, some interesting things, and that helps it not look like you just put clouds in the middle, but it looks like it might be pollution or something, which was the effect I was going for. Okay, next we've got the adjustments in the model file. So in the model file, this is the file that GLTF JSX creates. And when I first brought it over, all these doors were just way too bright. They just popped out and it didn't blend in well with the building itself. What I needed to do for that is I just went in and added a color to the material. I modified the material that's packed in the GLB, updated the color to make it half as bright, and that seemed to do the trick. So just to show the difference, you should be able to see the difference in the color between now when it's darker. Quit messing with those. You can see the brightness difference between them. Okay, now the drone. So it was really easy to quickly edit these materials. But then what I want to do for the drone is to have it move and constantly, I'm only going to use one drone, and I want it to reset when it gets out of the camera view. In the use frame, I've got a condition on its position. If it gets outside of the view on the x-axis, then I just reset it, or reset it to the other side of the view so the other side, it's out of view, and it brings it back to the beginning, and then it starts advancing along the x-axis. I've got a little rotation in here, so you can see the eye moving back and forth. That's the rotation with a sine. You can see it rotate back and forth. Yep. And then I have a slight position on its elevation. So if I let it increase by 10, you can see it a lot more distinctly. You'll see it bob up and down and look ridiculous. But I just didn't want it, because it's floating, I didn't want it to look like it was just too straight of a line. So I wanted to have a little bit of height adjustment just in case that subtle difference made a difference. If you are loading all this post-processing stuff in the effect composer, it's really easy. You're just going to download it from React 3 processing, just npm install, and just import all the things that you're going to use. There are other post-processing effects. I use some of them, noise and glitch and a bunch of other things. They're just as easy to try out. Once you start getting this running, you just start plugging in your different components for the pre-processing or the post-processing. And then you start setting their properties. But just start with their basic and then start messing with their different properties. They're all documented on their page. And this code is published, so if you want to reference it, you can always do that without pausing video or anything. Well, I hope you found this useful. I definitely enjoyed creating this today and am excited to share it with everybody. I hope that I can get another one out soon that turns out as well. I did publish this to GitHub pages. Thanks for joining, and thanks for joining. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one.